The American people are watching, and they will not forget. You may have the votes, you may have the muscle, but you do not have the legitimacy of a national consensus or of a constitutional imperative. This partisan coup d'etat will go down in infamy in the history of this nation.
This is their president we are talking about. The President of the United States does not serve at the pleasure of the legislature, does not serve at the pleasure of Joe Biden, does not serve at the pleasure of Henry Hyde. He is elected directly by the people of the United States of America. And the election of a president is the only nationwide vote the American people will ever cast. And that's a big deal.
U.S. President Donald Trump is on his way to an easy re-election next year if the American economy holds up. This is according to Moody's Analytics and its 3 different economic models that were released on Tuesday. According to the models, Trump will win at least 289 electoral votes and possibly as many as 351. Moody's has always been correct, except in 2016 when it predicted Hillary Clinton would win.
And we must not do so without an overwhelming consensus of the American people. There must never be a narrowly voted impeachment or an impeachment supported by one of our major political parties and opposed by the other. Such an impeachment will produce the divisiveness and bitterness in our politics for years to come and will call into question the very legitimacy of our political institutions. The American people have heard the allegations against the president, and they overwhelmingly oppose impeaching him. They elected President Clinton. They still support him. We have no right to overturn the considered judgment of the American people. Mr. Speaker,
these chambers will become the incinerator of the Constitution. There is no fairness in this process. There is no justice, and there is no dignity.
The case against the president has not been made. There is far from sufficient evidence to support the allegations, and the allegations, even if proven true, do not rise to the level of impeachable offenses.
Today, the Republican majority is not judging the president with fairness, but impeaching him with a vengeance. In the investigation of the president, fundamental principles which Americans hold dear, privacy, fairness, checks and balances, have been seriously violated. And why? Because we are here today because the Republicans in the House are paralyzed with hatred of President Clinton, and until the Republicans free themselves of this hatred, our country will suffer.
This is indeed a Republican coup d'etat. Mr. Speaker and members, Americans all, the Republicans will couch this extremist, radical anarchy in pious language, which distorts the Constitution and the rule of law. Bill and Hillary Clinton are the real targets, and the Republicans are the vehicles being used by the right-wing Christian coalition extremists to direct and control our culture. The rule of law has been violated in denying the president notice of charges, by the abuse of power in the collecting of so-called evidence, and the denial of the presumption of innocence. President Clinton is not guilty of the trumped-up charges presented in these 4 articles of impeachment. Yes, Bill Clinton is guilty of certain indiscretions in his private life. However, he did not commit high crimes and misdemeanors.
Over the past month, evidence has emerged that the President of the United States pressured a foreign leader to investigate one of his leading political rivals.
There was no pressure put on them whatsoever. I put no pressure on them whatsoever. I could have. I think it would probably, possibly have been okay if I did, but I didn't. I didn't put any pressure on them whatsoever. You know why? Because they want to do the right thing, and they know about corruption, and they probably know that Joe Biden and his son are corrupt.
Evidence has emerged that the President of the United States
pressured a foreign leader to investigate one of his leading political rivals.
No, you heard that we had, I think, good phone call It was normal. We spoke about many things, and so I think, and you read it, that nobody pushed me. Yes.
In other words, no pressure.
A whistleblower inside the intelligence community first raised alarms that the president applied pressure on Ukrainian President Zelensky to pursue an investigation that would benefit President Trump politically.
Zelensky earlier today offering some support for President Trump by suggesting that nobody on the American side pressured him to open an investigation into Joe Biden and Joe Biden's son.
Да, тому шантажу не було, тому що це не було предметом нашої розмови. Зовсім. Зі зброєю наші дзвінки, я маю на увазі, ці історії з бурізмою, зі зброєю вони ніяк не пов'язані.
I think it's ridiculous. It's a witch hunt. I'm leading in the polls. They have no idea how they stop me. The only way they can try is through impeachment. That call was perfect. It couldn't have been nicer. And even the Ukrainian government put out a statement that that was a perfect call. There was no pressure put on them whatsoever.
The president himself then released a memorandum of his conversation with President Zelensky, which demonstrably validated the whistleblower's concerns.
Bullshit!
Amidst all this, the White House is engaged in stonewalling and outright defiance of congressional prerogatives.
House Democrats are finally indulging in their three-year-old impeachment obsession. Full steam ahead. Many of us remember the Washington Post headline that was literally published on Inauguration Day back in 2017. Here's what it said. The campaign to impeach President Trump has begun. And sure enough, House Democrats have been at it ever since. One prominent House Democrat called this presidency illegitimate before it had even begun.
I don't see this president-elect as a legitimate president.
You do not consider him a legitimate president?
One of Speaker Pelosi's committee chairs, whom she has tasked with leading this process, promised years ago that she'd find a way to impeach the president.
Impeachment is about whatever the Congress says it is. There is no law that dictates impeachment. What the Constitution says is high crimes and misdemeanors, and we define that. Here you have a president who I can tell you and guarantee you is in collusion with the Russians to undermine our democracy.
The investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired with the Russian government in its election interference activities.
So, Madam President, now that Speaker Pelosi has finally crumbled and allowed her left-wing impeachment caucus to dictate the House's actions, I don't think many of us were expecting to witness a clinic in terms of fairness or due process. But even by their own partisan standards, House Democrats have already found new ways to lower the bar. This is about the most consequential process the House of Representatives could possibly engage in: overruling American voters and nullifying an election. Surely, any such process must be conducted with the utmost fairness and transparency. It must be held to the most exacting of standards. And yet, House Democrats have wasted no time throwing fairness and precedent to the wind. Already, they've denied their Republican counterparts certain minority rights, like equal subpoena power, that Republicans provided Democrats during the Clinton impeachment. Already, they've made clear that President Trump's counsel will not be allowed to participate in hearings, present evidence, and cross-examine witnesses, all important rights that Republicans provided to President Clinton. Already, one House chairman has been caught publicly mischaracterizing his committee's handling of the whistleblower inquiry on which this whole investigation hinges. So, Madam President, for all the public hyperventilating over institutional norms that we've heard from House Democrats in recent years, it appears they have no intention of letting norms, precedents, or basic due process stand in the way as they seek to cancel out a presidency.
voice.